She is an amazing woman, passionate about design, data, and sustainability. And this is a topic that should be in every single discussion about the near future. Manuela Suarez, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you, Carol, Rachel, famous friends and data plus woman, to invite me. I will share my screen. So we can start the presentation. Great, so thank you everyone for joining this digital and sustainability talk. So I'm Manuela Suarez. As Carol introduced me, I'm a solution engineer in Trabalhou. I work with Rachel, and I have a background. I have studied environmental sciences and policies, and for the last years I've been working in sustainability and in data in France, and I'm currently based in London, but I'm originally from Colombia. So why I thought that this talk could be interesting for us to discuss, and why I wanted to do this talk. Actually, when I started working in data, I realized that I didn't know much about what was actually the impact on, for instance, CO2 emissions, energy consumption of the data I was using in daily basis. And also I could see many different applications that actually make us leverage and accelerate the climate action using technology and digital. So I started investigating, and I think the relationship between digital and sustainability has two phases. On the one hand, there is a negative impact on sustainability, on climate change, on consumption, as any other subject. And on the other hand, this positive and opportunities that allows us to innovate, educate, and find solutions to fight for the climate change. So as both topics, fostering digitalization and answering the sustainability urgency are two main and current topics, I wanted to create this talk to kind of gather, on the one hand, numbers, figures on the environmental impact on digital, and also some examples, so that we are passionate about data and design and trigger, we can find ways to innovate and act to find the best use of data. So this is the quick agenda. So we have a few minutes. I want to do a very quick introduction on some outlooks and the challenges of sustainability, and then on the one hand study the kind of what's actually the impact on climate change, on action, on the environment of the digital sector that I think is important that we're aware of. Then see some examples of digital applications and some numbers, and then my objective of this talk is just to bring all these information that we can then leverage the best use of digital interactions. So first, without entering into details, I really like this report that is actually very interactive. It was actually made with Trabalhou from the International Telecommunications Union, that actually mentioned how is the state of the digital development. We've all experienced that in the current years, how that fast pace and accessibility has accelerated. But actually, of course, there are still many gaps and stakes, for instance, on gender or on urban-rural population, on how rich or developed the country is. And that's what is critical. What use we're making of digital, who has access, and what we're using. And for that, it's important that we can see how, for instance, is the current state on sustainability, so that we can use digital technologies on sustainability. So then we've seen on the environmental urgency, I really like this report that I recommend you because it's a different perspective that we usually see on climate change. And of course, the important that we can, for instance, tackle the increase of CO2 below the 1.5 or 2 degrees, because that will have massive impacts in our health, in the biodiversity, in all the stakes that we have. But this report, I like it because it's actually focusing on the health, human health. So I want to just see it with you. And I found it's a great example on how digital can be used to actually generate education and awareness on that. So these reports tell us on sustainability that, the increase of population, increase of needs. So it's expected that, for instance, by 2050, we will almost be 10 billion people. This population will increase to almost to more than 11 billion people by 2010. And there is a shift. Almost 70% will live in urban. And actually, this was quite shocking for me to see that actually almost 1 out of 4 deaths right now are actually linked to environmental causes. This report is very interesting. I will share the link later on the chat, but it is in different aspects. For instance, the food that we waste, the energy that we consume, that actually we have more renewables. The price of renewables has actually decreased with the technology. I will go very fast on this so that I can share the link. So on energy, for instance, the renewable price has decreased, so renewable share has massively improved. However, we see that, for instance, electricity that's generated from coal, that is the most CO2 intensive source, is also increasing. So it's also where at this moment where technology has actually accelerated new technologies, but it all depends on what type of sources we're using, etc. So this, I think, is an interesting report to see and go deeper. Something I want to mention here is waste, because it's very linked to digital, because as we've seen now, very often we change a phone it's estimated that in average we change it every 2 years. And this is actually very critical, because most of the electronic waste is actually not documented and illegal, and it has consequences for health and climate change, while it presents a lot of opportunities as well for recycling, we will see in a minute. So the stake is that, there is an environmental urgency, and how we can actually use and understand the impact of the digital sector. So I have a question on you if you want to bring your answers in the chat. So between the digital sector and the aviation sector, which one do you think has more impact on climate change? Well, let's see in the results, but then I was surprised yet to learn, for instance, that even before the pandemic, digital sector was already representing more greenhouse gas emissions than the aviation sector, and that gap is actually increasing. So this is what exactly I want to point out, because I can be a bit pessimistic, but I think it's important that we're aware on that so that we can act positively on our uses of design and data. So what exactly is the impact? So regarding energy and the CO2 emissions, so one part of the energy consumption is for electricity. And on all the electricity worldwide consumed, it's estimated that the information and communications technologies represent 10% of that total electricity we already consume. And that is forecasted to increase. These are very rounded numbers, but I think they give us a big picture on that. So that's the total electricity we consume. 10% on that is for the information communications technology. 10% of that is specific to the data centers, and something I was very surprised is that 10% of that was actually on Bitcoin uses. So as we mentioned before, there's the energy impact and direct effects on the CO2, but there's also the electronics waste we were mentioning. So the problem of this electronic waste is they are the growest stream on waste generated. They are not documented. They have substances, for instance, mercury, that can be very hazardous for health. The problem is that those wastes generally end up in least developed or developing countries, not regulated. And it also contains actually substances that act directly on the CO2. And the big thing here is the potential there is on recycling, because As you may know, in our electronic devices, we have gold, silver, aluminium, copper, iron, and if we manage to create that circular economy on it, there's a huge economic potential and, of course, benefiting sustainability. So that's, for instance, one of the main challenges we could tackle. So, okay. When I've been presenting this, I've also shown a 2 minutes video that here, for a matter of purpose of time, we don't have, I will not present. I will also share the link, but it's also how actually right now, for instance, online streaming impact has on it. And the point here on the negative impact of digital sector on climate change, as with any other sector, is sobriety is very important. How we use technology, how we make the best use of it, and we are efficient on that use. For instance, how efficient the data centers are, where all our videos, photos, data is stored, is crucial, so that this sector is greener. So now I want to show the other side of the coin, more positive applications of digital sector that are actually crucial, so that we can limit the rise of temperature below 2 or 1.5 degrees and accelerate that action. So it's already been estimated that, for instance, this study of Gemini has estimated that, for instance, with artificial intelligence, we have already, across all different sectors, reduced 13% of all the greenhouse gas emissions that have been emitted in only 2 years. Then, yeah, this report can go a bit further on the details, but it's actually give us this, how if we use technology, if we use data, if we use our design in a proper way, it has this beneficial aspects. Here is just a non-exhaustive list of different information on how, for instance, data can help to achieve sustainability goals, not only on environment, but also on reducing poverty, on fostering education, but of course, for instance, how satellite image is essential, for instance, to track the deforestation of the Amazon forest and to act on it. For instance, some examples on how AI is being used in the biodiversity, and I find interesting, is, for instance, just very easy image detection, so that we can count species and identify how their losses has been happened, for instance. This is another very nice example on how with imagery we can actually identify, for instance, poachers, illegal poachers, so we can tackle faster before the poach happens. Other, for instance, uses is how with imagery we can identify waste on the coast, so that we can quickly, for instance, alert and monitor to go and collect it before it arrives to the ocean, and so on. Yeah, AI for conservation is actually a very big point. We can accelerate the action. In particular, for instance, crucial in Latin America, that actually is the region worldwide with the highest loss of animal mass. It's estimated that it's losing biodiversity at a 90% rate, which is very big. So it's very important that the different companies, in particular companies in the digital sector, are committed to becoming carbon neutral, or even more ambitious, net zero. That means that they can, in a long way, truly undo the CO2 emissions that they emit in very permanent sources, in permanent ways. And this is an objective that it's fostering, that companies, states, different countries are engaged into that true net zero approach. Because, for instance, here we have all the different some different tech companies and how ambitious they are in the target, and of course how not only we establish goals, and these companies are establishing goals, and also how they make it happen in the future. So there's a lot of movement, a lot of applications on tech, but yeah, we're in this crucial moment where everything is to be really implemented and developed, so that we have this real benefit and uses of digital sustainability to foster climate change. So many different initiatives, so many ONGs, actors. Here I think that term, digital sustainability, that is relatively new, is quite interesting. And I found these actually actors that are the most involved. So for instance, the Shift project is the one that is studying the impact on climate change of the digital sector to monitor. And then there are these, for instance, digital corporations, or for instance, digital environmental sustainability, that is actually accelerating the use of digital towards sustainability. So I thought those must be maybe interesting for you to follow. And then, just this was a very so conversation more on research and some information and some examples on how we, even as a citizens, we can do programs or we can do applications of our data in a better way. So it's clearly data and design is the best way, as we were seeing in some of these infographics examples, an amazing way to educate or to share information, enabling us to innovate, but also finding other type of technology that actually will manage to reduce the impact. So for instance, there is this example of Google and DeepMind project that using artificial intelligence managed to consume 30% less energy by cooling the data centers, or all these type of little applications at the different levels. And I'm sure you are really skilled data people, that you have very innovative solutions to work on that. So I will share the links on the chat, that I think they're going to be interesting further this. And I'm open now to have some questions.
Whoa, thank you so much, Manuela. I'm really glad that you didn't show that video that you sent me earlier. It was a really cute video, but it was so pessimistic.
I decided not to show it. I will post it in the link, but it's true. It's sometimes some realities that we don't want to hear, or then, but I think in some ways it's important that we have that information that will actually make it. But I will share that video, but a bit pessimistic.
Leave it on the chat so people can, when they need to get a little bit sad, they can watch it, and then they can think, well, that's really cute, but it's really pessimistic. We have one question from Eduardo Asta. Do you also work with consumption or conscious consumption and sustainability, or is just your research?
So yes, great. Let me just check. Great. So it's interesting. I don't conscious consumption. It's true that with sustainability there are everyone has a role to play. For instance, on how we consume. For instance, on digital, how often we need to change. Actually, for instance, a new phone, is it every 2 years, or can I wait 3 years? Video shows. And for instance, before I was working in a startup that's called Deepkey, based in Paris, and actually we were collecting and gathering data for consumption so that the companies can actually monitor the indicators, and also with some models detecting where they could, for instance, reduce the consumption. For instance, by identifying a retail company that, for instance, the heating was on when the shops weren't open, so we can tackle that and actually making a more energy efficient consumption of that. So I think it works in both levels, as a, for instance, consumer myself, or also helping other companies to have a more conscious consumption, as you mentioned.
Barbara just wrote a really interesting line of thinking that, and I was wondering if you agree with that as well. Do you think AI for environment conservation is almost like a social responsibility, since training an AI algorithm demands so much energy power and process power and things like that.
Yeah, it's always the very tricky point on this topic, that we need sobriety, we need to reduce consumption. At the same time, what's the outcome? I think is the way at least I'm seeing it, is what's the outcome? Is what I'm doing in my models are helping to share this information that is not available to conserve the species, or for instance, just duplicating, for instance, models that already exist, because as you mentioned, it consumes a lot of energy. So what we're using it, and I think is with any topic, is as we were mentioning, what I consume is that a good use of the resources, of the time, of the energy, and have sobriety when possible.
Awesome. Does this line of thinking also impacts directly your work? Like before you raise like this huge data set and work this huge data set, you think twice, like, should I do this, or should I be using all my time and all this energy in something like that will produce a better outcome for the environment?
Exactly. Oh, was that a question? Sorry.
Yes. Please talk about it.
Well, it's always a tricky question. But for instance, I don't know, something that's silly, but that like in my personal inbox, for instance, deleting emails with that I'm not longer using, I will not need, that have, for instance, heavy attached pieces, or I don't know, there are solutions as well where you can, for instance, search something on the internet, and also you can, for instance, plant a tree or have some social impacts or work on the project, which is very simple way to just search your information, something I will do as well, but it will have another impact on afterwards. For instance, are Ecosia and Lilo, two search engines that have a positive impact when you use it. So it doesn't,
Never heard of those. Could you just, after we finish, could you just share them on the chat?
Definitely.
This is really interesting. Do we have any other questions? I think I have one more question. How did you decide to focus part of your work on data and sustainability? How does this click happen?
Good question. I think my background was biology and then environment. So I was actually not familiarized with data at all until my last work in the startup, where actually through data we were able to kind of foster sustainability, not clients. So it was a bit, and then I saw all the potential that data and digital can have. And then, I think, also studying both. And then, for instance, in my studies, I have these classes on, for instance, degrowth, of very militant or more engaged, and at the same time, corporate or in the daily life is just also, there are so many different ways we're consuming and using. And I think, I wanted to kind of, study a bit more this relationship, because sometimes I feel that there's not that much awareness on digital impact. For instance, we know on the planes or on the food we're consuming, and the digital no, and at the same time we are people passionate, have skills, we have also different passions. So I think that it's just we have some power on that, on the way we use and what we communicate and what stories. So I thought I would want to talk about that at least.
Awesome. Asta has another question. What is the name of this startup that you have worked in France?
Great. It was called Deepkey. I will also put it.
Yeah, perfect.
In the chat.
Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you so much, Manuela, for joining.
Thank you for this great event, and hope the other sessions and etc. and interactions go in, and if you want, I'm available on LinkedIn.
Yes, and raise awareness for this very important topic. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much.